Would it be a violation of this law if a civilian were to be experimented on and his thoughts broadcast without his consent using biotechnology? RA 9851, specifically Section 4.2, which forbids torture or other inhuman treatment, including biological experiments, would probably be regarded as violating the situation you described. The use of biotechnology to probe a person's thoughts without their consent and broadcast them for experimentation purposes would constitute a form of cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment. Such conduct would also violate the person's right to privacy, dignity, and bodily autonomy. Any person who engages in acts of torture or inhuman treatment, such as biological experiments, with the intent to cause great bodily or mental pain or suffering, is considered to have committed a crime against humanity under RA 9851. And what if the aggressors mentioned above broadcast the victim's persona to audiences on a daily basis for slander and defamation? If the aggressors broadcast the victim's personage to audiences every day for slander and defamation, they could be held criminally liable for the crime of libel under Philippine law. Libel is defined under Article 353 of the Revised Penal Code as damaging accusations or insinuations discrediting a person, including imputations of crime, vice, or defect, or any discrediting circumstance. Under Philippine law, libel can be committed either through written or oral defamation, or through any other similar means. If assailants disseminate the victim's character with intent to malign or defame publicly, they may be held accountable for libelous conduct. The penalty for libel in the Philippines varies depending on the circumstances of the offense. If the defamation be carried out through analogous means, including broadcasting, the punishment may consist of imprisonment for 6 months to 2 years, or a fine ranging from 200 to 6,000 pesos or both. Is forced labor prohibited in the Philippines? Which laws come into play? Yes, forced labor is illegal in the Philippines. Republic Act, RA. Number 10,364 or the Expanded Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2012. This law defines and penalizes human trafficking, which includes forced labor, and provides protection and assistance to trafficking victims. RA No. 9208 or the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2003. This law also prohibits and penalizes human trafficking, including forced labor. If the aggressor conceals a person's identity while the person is being held in a state of forced labor, is it a violation of the law? Yes. If an aggressor withholds a person's identity while the person is being held in a state of forced labor, it may violate several laws in the Philippines. Under Philippine law, forced labor is defined as any work or service exacted from any person under the menace of any penalty and for which the said person has not offered himself/herself voluntarily. A person held in forced labor is compelled to work or render services under duress, against their volition, and under threat or coercion. Intentional concealment of the identity of a person held in forced labor violates their right to identity and information, safeguarded under Philippine legislation. Specifically, this may be a violation of the following. Article 2, Section 4 of the Philippine Constitution, which recognizes the right of every person to life, liberty, and property, and to pursue happiness. Republic Act, RA. Number 10,173 or the Data Privacy Act of 2012. which recognizes the right to privacy of personal information and imposes penalties for the unauthorized use or disclosure of personal information. RA number 10364 or the Expanded Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2012, which penalizes the crime of trafficking in persons, including forced labor. Context 1. Biological experiments in violation of RA 9851. Conducting biological experiments on civilians, whether during peacetime or in armed conflict, is strictly prohibited under international law and RA 9851. Violation of Section 4.2 of RA 9851 may result in a penalty of imprisonment ranging from 20 years to 40 years, without prejudice to the liability of the offender under other laws. Context 1.a. Violation of constitutional rights through unauthorized probing and experimentation on civilians. The scenario described may involve violations of constitutional rights, particularly the right to privacy and the right to due process. Violation of constitutional rights may result in civil and criminal penalties, depending on the specific circumstances and the laws that have been violated. Context 2. Slander and defamation through broadcasting. Slander and defamation are criminal offenses under Philippine law, and may be punishable by imprisonment and/or fines. Under the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012, online libel is punishable by imprisonment ranging from 6 years and 1 day to 12 years, or a fine ranging from PHP 200,000 to PHP 1 meter or both. Context 3. Forced labor. Forced labor is illegal in the Philippines, and is prohibited under Republic Act No. 10364, or the Expanded Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2012. The penalty for offenses under this law ranges from 20 years to life imprisonment and a fine of not less than PHP 1 meter but not more than PHP 2 meters, depending on the specific circumstances of the offense. Can a contract in the Philippines bypass the Constitution or law? A contract that violates the Constitution and the law is null and void ab initio and vests no rights and creates no obligations. It produces no legal effect at all. G.R. Number 215014, lawful.